Well, morning everyone.
Morning.
You alright? Good. Great to be here with you this morning. Isn't it great just to take some time out of the madness and pace of life? And how many of you feel sometimes that by the time you get to Sunday you're ready just to kind of chill out a little bit? And it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice, and I think sometimes I can take it a little bit for granted. I'm sure that many of you might feel the same way, that you can just kind of bounce from Sunday to Sunday, but it's great just to stop, to pause, to worship God. And sometimes I think I slow down even more when it's communion, don't you? Just that nice pause. And do you overcomplicate it sometimes, the faith, and then you just come back to communion and you go, do you know what? This is it, isn't it? I've made a mess. He loves me. He forgives me. So I'm going to ask for his forgiveness. I'm going to dust myself down, and I'm going to give it my best shot again. And do you know what? I'll mess up again. And that's all right. That's all right. As long as we're giving it our best shot, I think that's all right, because actually we're never going to be perfect, are we? And I love communion. I really do. Anyway, there you go. That's not the sermon bit. All right, now you can set your clocks. Okay, but it's great to be here with you. I cannot remember the last time I was in this building. I think it was when Don Tiller was here that I was last in this building, and it's nice, isn't it? I mean, I know it's been done in the last couple of years, but it looks fantastic. Posh toilets. Important that we have nice toilets, especially when people who are guests coming and they come into. I've been to some churches. Oh man, I've been at one church in Halifax where the toilet's outside still. That's not good. That's not good, especially in winter. So, but anyway, I'm not going to talk about toilets. I came across this list of things. There was actually a big, massive list of them. I'm not going to read them all, but this list of things, and it was called genuine excuses. Genuine excuses. So I thought, I want to see whether you believe this morning these are genuine excuses. So we're going to take a little public vote after each one. But I really want these to be genuine excuses, because they are. They're going to have to make me chuckle. All right, so let's see whether you think they're genuine or not. We'll do a quick show of hands. So here we go. My wife ran off with a policeman, and when I saw your flashing lights, I didn't stop because I thought you might be the policeman who is trying to bring her back to me. Okay, what do we think? Genuine? Not genuine? Not sure? Not really bothered. Okay. Okay, here we go. Please excuse Jennifer for missing school yesterday. I like this. We forgot to get the Sunday paper off the porch, and when we found it Monday, we thought it was Sunday. That's good, isn't it? Genuine? We like that one. We like that one. Not genuine? Okay, all right. Here we go. Bob, I like this one. I really want this to be genuine. Bob was late for school today because his little brother replaced the milk in their cereal with PVA glue. And Bob's mouth stuck together and we needed to melt the glue, alright? So who thinks that's genuine? Alright, who doesn't think it's genuine? Who really wants it to be genuine? Yeah, exactly. And the last one, I like this one. Please excuse my son for doing so poorly on the test. The hour he puts aside to do homework and studying every week, we lost when the clock sprung forward over the weekend. Okay, genuine? Not genuine? Okay, all right, okay, good. I love that list of actually, there was about 25 of those, but that you can see why I only chose a few for us this morning. But I don't know whether they are genuine excuses or not. I don't know whether they're made up, but I'm told that they're genuine. But whether they are or not, I'm not 100% sure. And I often think, I wonder how many of the excuses we often use for not doing what God wants us to do. I wonder how often they are genuine, or whether sometimes you might be a little bit like me. You're very good at coming up with excuses. Anybody good at coming up with excuses? Excuses as to why God shouldn't use me and he should use somebody else. Do you ever come up with those excuses? And I thought to myself one day, there's a fine line between an excuse and a reason. You see, I can think of lots of reasons why God shouldn't use me. Loads of them. Loads of them. But here's the deal. I think there's a fine line between reason and excuse. And this to me is what nails it. Willingness. Willingness. Excuse me if I pause for a few bits of water. I've just got over a man flu. If indeed you ever get over man flu. So my throat's a bit dry. But I want to take you on a bit of a journey this morning. And we're gonna look at the Bible just to help us think a little bit about this. And it's a conversation in the Bible that you'll be really familiar with. You'll have seen, possibly even read this conversation many, many times. It won't be a new passage to you. And yet I find some of the things in there really strikingly and familiar, actually. Because even though it is with God and Moses, I can definitely say there have been times when I would have had this kind of conversation with God. And so to help us think about it, for those of you who are familiar with your way around the Bible, we're going to have a look at Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. Exodus 3, verses 1 to 10. You need time to either find the pages or stick your app on. Exodus 3, 1 to 10. We're actually going to look at into chapter 4 as well, but I'll let you know which bits of chapter 4 as we hit them. It says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. At this Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out to that land, into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Marmites. Just to trick you. They were raised, some people liked, some people didn't. But anyway, there you go. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. I think this is one of the most incredible missional passages in the whole of the Bible even. It grabs me on so many levels. You've got these powerful images and phrases of, now their cry has come up to me and I have come down. It captures something, doesn't it, of God's heart for humanity. And so I really love this passage. And I love the fact that all the way through this kind of chapter 3 and going into chapter 4, you see this kind of heightened presentation of the supernatural activity of God, and yet you see the heightened awareness of one man's humanity. And I'm just grabbed all the time. And whenever I read this passage, I always reflect back to myself that whenever we're serving God, whatever God asks us to do, whenever we're seeking to be on mission, as we call it these days, whenever we're seeking to reach out and to reach those that God has sent us to reach rather, I think I like to remind myself, it's not a human enterprise, it's a divine operation. And you know, whenever we organise outreach events, it's not just a human enterprise. It's not just a programme, is it? Programme of outreach. I saw that once in a church's bulletin. It said our programme of outreach, and I didn't say anything, but I was twitching inside. Heaven forbid that our outreach becomes just a programme. I know that's not what they were really saying, because I knew the church really well. But I don't want to be engaged in a programme of outreach. I want to be engaged in God's mission, don't you? I want to be engaged in bringing God to people. Do you know what I've been reminded of? I wasn't going to say this actually, but I'm going to say it now. Do you know what I've been reminded of a lot recently? And it's one of those things where, you know those phrases that you possibly heard loads? You probably even said it yourself. And then sometimes it's like, bang, they hit you in a new way. And you can't always identify why they've hit you in a new way. Do you know those moments? It's just that all of a sudden it feels a bit different when you hear this. And this is what I've been reflecting over in the last couple of months, that God's really been speeding up in my heart, for want of a better phrase. And this is the concept. Do you know, God doesn't need us to do anything. He can do anything he wants without us. I mean, for those of you not sure about that, take the creation of the world. Where were you? Do you know what I mean? That's a pretty major event, right? And he kind of managed all right without us. But this is the phrase, that God has chosen to restrict most of his activity through human beings. Yes. Now that I've just recently been really blown away by. And it kind of shifts you out of obligation into privilege. Kind of shifts you thinking, oh, I must do this, to, oh my actual goodness, I get a chance to do this. And I'm still trying to get my head around, because you see, if I was God, I probably wouldn't use me. Or probably you as well. Come to it. And you probably wouldn't use me. Especially one or two of you know me here, all right? You definitely wouldn't use me. Right? But the staggering thing is that God has said, look, I'm going to restrict most of what I do on planet Earth through human beings. It's incredible, actually, when that thing gets a hold of you. And that's why I want us to just consider that it's not a human enterprise. It's a divine operation. Even when I go and invite somebody to church, to an event, it's not a human enterprise, it's a divine operation. When I love somebody or care for somebody or share my faith with somebody, we need to stop focusing a little bit more focused, not so much on us, but on God, not on me able to do this or not able to do this, but more on God, not me on doing something, but God working through me. And this was this conversation that Moses had with God, that he couldn't quite get his head round it. Just let's have a quick look at this conversation. First thing that Moses says is, who am I? Who am I? Look at verse 11. But Moses said to God, who am I? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like that? Who am I? When it comes to serving God, who am I? When it comes to kind of evangelizing, who am I? Do you ever feel like that? Please tell me it's not just me. It isn't. That's good to know. That's good to know. It's like, because we're aware of our own humanity, aren't we? We're aware of our own weaknesses and aware of our own failures now. Too much aware of other times we've messed up in the past, right? Who am I? You know, I don't wake up every morning and throw back the curtains and go, good morning, Lord. Sometimes I throw back the curtains and I think, oh, flipping heck, it's morning, I'm going back to bed. Anybody else do that? Yeah? I don't wake up going, I am God's man of power for the hour. And this might come as a shock to you. I just about wake up on a morning and it takes me a good while to come round. And I'm not this like man who's always moving in the miraculous, you know. I didn't kind of lead my first convert to Christ at 3. Do you know what I mean? I'm not kind of that person. There are other people that I look at that I wish I was like them. I wish I was like them. And I think possibly that they're not really like what I think they're like. It's kind of, they're like a Facebook type, like, you know, where it's like presenting their best, you know what I mean? Anybody know what I mean by that? And it's like, oh, I'm wanting to try and live up to that. And they're not even like that. They're not even like that in that moment. My mate, do you remember the word tracts? Yeah. Little evangelistic leaflets we used to give out. My mate, he was lethal with them. I think he was a dealer. He seemed to have a tract for everything. Depressed, got a tract. Do you know what I mean? He literally had a tract for everything. Me, I don't always feel that brilliant. I don't consider myself to have lots of brains. I was a butcher before this, so I saw lots of brains, but I don't consider myself some serious academic who's got degrees coming out of everything and everywhere. And nearly every time I speak, ladies and gentlemen, I ask why me. Now, some of you who know me really well, you might find that really difficult to believe because I've got a measure of confidence. But you know what? Honestly, you will not believe what I go through when I stand up to speak. You will not believe the nerves that I go through, the worry, the concern that I go through before I speak. Who am I? And I loved what God's reply was. Very simple. I'll be with you. I'll be with you. Who am I, Lord? I'll be with you. Who am I? Divine. A human enterprise, rather. I'll be with you. Divine operation. I'm so glad that a man by the name of Brian Hardacre didn't say, who am I? When he came, knocked on the door of my home, and my whole family came to Christ. He'd only just become a Christian 6 days before himself. I'm glad he didn't say, who am I? I've only been a Christian 6 days. Came and knocked on the door of my home. My whole family became Christians. You've kind of peaked a bit there, haven't you, in your evangelism? Do you know what I mean? You know, you might just have the rest of your life off, haven't you? Because like, first time you go try and share your faith and the whole family comes to Christ, it's like anything less than that's a disappointment, isn't it, from then on? Do you know what I mean? So then the next little bit of the conversation we pick up in verse 13. Who are you? Who are you? Moses said to God, suppose. He's not committing, is he? And we notice that. He's not committing. He says, suppose I go. It's like what they do on airplanes in the unlikely event of a fire. In the unlikely event that I'm going to go, just suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me. And they ask me, what's his name? Then what shall I say? In other ways, he's shifted. All right, the emphasis from who am I? Just tell them just I will be with you. And then he said, well, what about, never mind me now, what about you? Well, how do I deal with that about who you are? And God's reply is very, very simple. Verse 14, I am has sent you. Just tell them the I am has sent you. Now, I haven't got time to go massively into the significance of this phrase because I'm not wanting this morning to take you to some kind of in-depth teaching per se. I want to just encourage you and inspire you in your mission and in your evangelism. But I will just take a quick moment just to gently dig into this a little bit because maybe you might not fully understand, well, that's a daft thing, isn't it? I mean, the I am has sent me. I mean, that's bonkers, isn't it? He didn't really communicate much. But the people to who God was saying, go and tell them, the I am has sent you, were the Jews, and they totally understood the significance of the phrase, I am. It was a phrase that God used to describe himself. Basically, at its basic level, it's more complicated than this, but just to help us understand it, its basic level, it means just tell them the God that always has been, is right now, and will continue to be, has sent you. A little bit more complicated than that, but just for the sake of simplicity and kind of not getting too distracted. And they would know that it's like God knows how to reveal himself to people. Like God said, don't worry about me proving who I am. It's not for you to worry about. You just go out and do it. So often in our evangelism, we're worried about people not becoming Christians or not responding, or we beat ourselves up with so many things. And do you know, God, he's all right at proving himself to people. We present, he proves. We present Hebrews. Don't worry about the stuff that you shouldn't be worried about. Let God deal with that. This man Brian came and knocked on the door of my home, as I mentioned. My mum and dad split up when I was a kid. My mum remarried, and my biological father was an alcoholic, and he was quite a violent man. They split up. Mum remarried a good guy called Jimmy Greenwood. He adopted us, and he classed himself. So when I talk about dad, that's who I mean. Okay, he classed himself. This was his phrase. He was a lazy atheist. That's what he called himself. I'm a lazy atheist. And what he meant by that was he decided there was no God, but he couldn't be bothered to find out whether it was true or not. Which I think is quite a good description when you think about it. A lazy atheist. Very honest description, really. And when Brian came and knocked on the door of our home, I mean, it was a freaky night. I was actually upstairs because I'd been grounded for six weeks. I'm not going to tell you what it was for. Well, I might if you pay me. But Brian came and knocked on the door of our home, and from what I understand, he knocked on the door, Dad opened the door, and there was Brian like this. Because he'd just become a Christian. They're like that, new Christians, aren't they? Give us a little while, we'll knock the enthusiasm out of them, but, you know, up until then, it's like this, isn't it? So Dad opens the door, and then Brian goes, what do you think about life after death? Now, that's not what you expect of a Saturday night, is it? It's not like, can I be better with a catalogue back or something like that, isn't it? But Brian's got this massive smile. What a weird question to ask somebody. I wouldn't suggest it was the number one question you ask when trying to engage people about faith sharing. But here's the interesting thing. About 18 months before, 2 years, it's all a little bit hazy, before that, my dad had been out. He was a sub-aqua diver for a hobby, you know, the ones with the tanks on the back and the flippers or fins, as he tells me to call them. And they'd been out on a diving holiday to Eilat in Israel, and his best friend had had a heart attack when he was underwater and died at sea. And they took him to a military hospital and they cut his wetsuit off him. And the military doctor said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for him. He's dead. And my dad came out of this military hospital that night and sat outside, and he was brought up in Bradford in quite a working class background where you didn't really cry, and he wept and wept and wept, and he asked himself this question in his mind: there has to be more to life than this. So can you see the significance of Brian saying, what do you think about life after death? See, God knows how to reveal himself to people. Why? Because it's not a human enterprise, it's a divine operation. Have you ever found yourself saying, they will never come to faith? Because you can't imagine how that person could ever become a Christian, and then they do. I've actually got a friend of mine, he says to me every time, he said, I'm still shocked I'm a Christian. He said, I'm not quite sure how it happened. He said, one day I thought I'm never going to become a Christian, then I did. And he can't get his head around it. It's brilliant, isn't it? I absolutely love it. Because that's what God does, right? Yeah. That's what, right? And God quite likes a challenge, I think. I think he's up for a bit of a challenge. And I've discovered this, and I'm trying to remind myself all the time that when God asks me to go and do something, it's not a human enterprise. It's a divine operation. And what I've found is God often does his bit when I do my bit. In fact, when I do my bit, I find out often that God's already doing his bit. That's more like what happens. So then Moses is not happy with that reply from God. So he says the next little bit. What if they don't believe? Have a little look at chapter 4, verse 1. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say the Lord did not appear to you? Do any of you remember, this will test you, we had a thing in 1994 with Pentecostal churches called the Gym Challenge. Yeah. Do you remember that? Well done, I'm impressed. If you don't remember it, then come and see me afterwards and we'll fill you in. But it was an initiative from kind of the big Pentecostal denominations in the country to try and just talk about Jesus in me, yeah? And so I was down in Watford and I did a lot of open air evangelism in those days. Do any of you remember, this will date even more, the sketchboard? Yeah, remember that, yeah? So the sketchboard, well, it's a board you sketch on. So that brought clarity to proceedings. You had like paints, didn't you? And it had this thing called ladder lettering. And it was just a much more kind of conversational, chill-out way of kind of preaching the gospel on the streets. I was down in Watford, and that was a busy month for me. I think it was around March or April time or something like that. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm down there in Watford. We've done some outreach. It's gone really well. We've seen people become Christians, which is always lovely. And we're a little bit excited. We're a little bit giddy. We're on our way back. And my car is parked. I think it was the John Lewis, the big sort of department store type things. My car was parked in the multi-storey car park. So I've got my sketchboard, and I've got my paints, and I've got my mate with me, a guy called Phil Weaver. Some of you may have come across Phil. And we're walking, and we get in this lift. Now, Phil's a big lad, so there's not a lot of room for many more people when Phil's in the lift, all right? But it was the biggest lift, and there was about 8 of us. And do you ever say something, and as you're saying it, you're thinking, why am I saying this? Do you do that? And it was one of those moments. So the lift doors shut. There was a load of us in the lift. And I just opened up my mouth. I don't know why I did it. I just said, you're probably wondering why I've called this meeting. All right? Phil's at the side of me. He looks at me going, what are you saying, you idiot? All right? And there's about 5 or 6 people that weren't Christians in the lift. And you don't have long, do you, before the door opens. So I just gave a very, very quick thing, and the doors opened, and everybody left the lift, by the way. And I don't think they wanted to leave, because there were mainly men, and it was the women's lingerie department. And no man voluntarily goes in that department, I'm telling you. We feel just about as awkward as you can do, in that you don't know where to look. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. If I'd have thought, oh, I'm not going to say anything because what if they don't believe, I'd have missed the moment. Miss the moment. And so often I think we can miss the moment because we think about what if they don't? But what if they might? What if there's a possibility that the next time you invite somebody to a curry night, they might come? What if there's a possibility they might come and enjoy it? Yeah? What if there's a possibility of the next time you might share your testimony with somebody rather than being disinterested? What if there's a fledgling of possibility they might be willing to engage with you? I'm not going to worry about what if they don't. I want to concern myself, what if they might? Not even what if they will, but whether they might. You see, there's a flicker of an opportunity, there's a flicker of a thought that maybe God might possibly be at work here, and we need to get involved. Well, years ago I was doing a mission with a church in Bradford. We'd take a little team, we did these things called open door missions, and the church said to me, can we just go down onto the little parade? It was in I think it was in like a council estate, but there's like a little parade of shops. There's a post office there, and news agents, there's a grocer's there. And they said, we want to try this. So we did this thing where they got like a big branch and made like a tree and cut some bits, the sort of thing you might do with kids actually. And they called it the prayer tree. And we just went up, stuck it out there, and got these leaves and said to people, we'd love to pray for you. If you'd like us to pray for you for anything, then just write your first name, stick it on the tree, and when we go back later on, we're going to pray back at the church, and we'll pray for you if you'd like that. And it's interesting because when we had some really interesting ones, would you like us to pray for you? No thanks, I'm a Methodist. Honestly, that was one going, how does that work then? How does that work? But actually, one lady, we said, would you like us to pray for you? And she said, actually, I'd love that. I lost both my son-in-laws last week. We prayed for her. It's so often Mark Greenwood concerns himself, what happens if nothing happens? What happens if there's no opportunities? What happens? What happens if there's... Because I see it so often from a human perspective, but what happens if maybe God's at work somewhere? And it's interesting because we could just watch people walk into that post office, into that greengrocer's, and from a distance you'd think everybody's okay. But how many of you know that life's a bit rubbish? And lots of people's lives are a bit rubbish. And actually, my experience is that most of us are dealing with something. That's a bit of a challenge. What if there might be a possibility? But it's interesting, I can understand Moses' concern, because look at the phrases. What if they do not believe me? Or listen to me? And that's even worse, isn't it? Why do they want to listen? Or, even worse than that, What if they say the Lord did not appear to you? In other words, they challenge you. They come back and challenge what you believe. Suffering. What if they come back with that one? And it's a really fascinating little thing that takes place. We're not going to read the whole thing because I don't want to race on too much after our time together, time that when we need to be finishing. But I don't want to race out the passage either. But you get in 2:8 this conversation. And the Lord said to Moses, "What's that in your hand?" It's a staff. He replied, the Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So he gets the snake, takes it by the tail. That's significant in itself. Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back to a staff in his hand. That's freaky. So often we look at these things in the Bible and we almost sanitize them, don't we? And then the next bit says, right, take your hand and put it inside your cloak. So he takes his hand, puts it inside his cloak. God says, bring it out. He brings it out. It's scaly. That would freak me. We read these passages and we sanitize it. Imagine that. Imagine that. What, me hand? In my cloak. All right then. Well, what am I going to do now? Take it back out. Okay, what's the point of putting it in? Don't worry, buddy, what's the point, isn't it? Oh, I'll take it out. Ah! I'd be dry retching, wouldn't you? I'd be going, I can't look at it. I can't. It's horrible. But what God was doing, because we'd had this conversation where Moses keeps saying, what if this human? And God said, yeah, but this supernatural. And like, he's under fire. I mean, that doesn't happen every day of the week, does it? From a distance, he's looking, going, it's cracking on down there. It's weird. It says it in the Bible, it doesn't say cracking on. It does in the message, but not in this one, okay? I'm going to have a look at this strange sight. He goes over, and then the fire starts talking to him. That's weird, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it happens to you every morning. You come downstairs and the gas fire says morning. Maybe that happens to you. It never happened to me. I mean, could you imagine how this looks from a distance? That Moses is having a conversation with a fire. And the people from a distance going, I knew we'd lost it, I knew we'd lost it. I knew we'd lost it. Look, he's talking to a fire now. I mean, and I've noticed this often when God's doing something from a distance, it looks weird, right? But when you're involved with it, you know that God's involved in doing stuff. Anyway, I want to be distant. I'm going to carry on. Look at what God says at the end of this little bit here. In verse 8. If they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. Why does God say may? Because he knows, right? It's not a trick question, it's the truth. God knows everything, right? Beginning from the end. So why did God say, oh yeah, Moses, just go down, I'm going to send some boils, I'm going to send some frogs, I'm going to do the whole turning of the rivers into blood. That's kind of not going to work, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then once I've done this, then they'll believe. Why didn't God say that? Because he knows, right? And I've got a little theory. I think God was trying to show to Moses that even amongst this supernatural activity, there's a timing to stuff. There's a timing for people to come to faith. There's a process and a journey that people must go. So sometimes we're a little bit impatient in that. And one of the things that I try to help folks do, help church do, is to create an evangelism rhythm and pattern that is informed by this journey, informed by this timing. How many of you know you can be following God and praying for God to do something, nothing seems to shift, and then almost out of the blue, something happens and it happens quickly. There's acceleration. It's just God's timing. I think the Greek called it kairos. Chronos is chronological. Kairos is when God gets involved and there's an acceleration. And you're going, how come that's happened like that? Because we've been doing all the other stuff. Well, that's chronos, chronological. So I get the word chronological from. But now it's God's timing. And sometimes you can try and build church and build church and build church. It can be a hard slog. And then all of a sudden, bang, we seem to have some acceleration. It's like God's timing kicks in. I think we need to understand that there's a timing for everything, and that's all right. That doesn't mean that God's not working. In fact, you know what I've been thinking recently, last year? I've just been reflecting over, and it's one of these phrases again. Last year I just thought, do you know what? I think now I'm more convinced that God moves more in the small than he does in the big. And the thing is with Pentecostals, we want it now. Now! Like bursting blood vessels when we pray, do it now, Lord! I say, I don't want to do it now. And we go, no, but now, Lord! Not yesterday. I've heard people pray, Lord, we didn't want it yesterday. We don't want it tomorrow, not next week, not next. We want it now. And I think God's sometimes saying, I'm not planning on doing it till like 2022. You know what I mean? So you're praying, but all you're doing is you're ranting and raving. You're not praying in my will. I think we've got to understand sometimes. Now, please, I like enthusiastic prayers, right? So I don't want to minimise that. But it's not always about the outcome. It is about the go out. That's the pretty crucial thing. Right, last two bits really, really quickly. Next thing Moses says, look at verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you've spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and tongue. That was his next objection. What if I can't speak? Do you ever say that? What if I mess it up, Lord? What if I stumble on my words, or say something that I shouldn't have said, or don't say something that I should say? And then in verse 12, God says something. I love this. I will help you. But look at what will he help you do. I will help you speak well. And tell you what to say. I do a lot of teaching on communication. One of the things we say to people is good communication is good content, good delivery. What we say and how we say it. If we only have one or the other, then we're missing something. And here God's saying, look, I'm going to help you speak well, so I'm going to help you deliver it well, and give you the content. How many of you know when you've been in those moments that you've not thought you can do it, and then there have been times when we mess up, but there's often been times you're going, I said these words, I do not know where they came from. You've been in those moments, and it's God just working through us. Well, we need to draw this passage to an end, and it lands perfectly well, or not necessarily perfectly well, but it lands perfectly well in terms of what I want to say to you this morning. Look at verse 13. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord, please send someone else. What about them? They'd be better. What about them? They'd be better. See, all these things that Moses gave, genuine reasons, but I would suggest to you they were more excuses than reasons, because he wasn't willing really to go. And he finally caved in because God was putting the pressure on him. And he finally caved in and went. But I want to suggest to you that wasn't so much because he was willing, it's because he was under pressure to go. Because at every single moment, God had given him this undeniable answer. I want to pray and hope that you and I will never be in that place. And we are often, but that we could live out of that place, get out of it, where we don't focus on so much of the human side, because that's when our reasons and our excuses kick in, isn't it? But we focus on the supernatural side and the joy and the privilege of God restricting his activity through us. Just one quick little cheeky bit which I love in this passage, and then I'm going to pray. You know when Moses takes the staff, God says to him, throw it on the ground. And he throws it on the ground. I don't know if you know this. Up until that point, it's always referred to as the staff of Moses. And the staff for the shepherd represents everything. It represents his identity. It represents his living. It's the way that he would protect his sheep. It's phenomenal. It represents everything about him. God says, throw it on the ground. He throws it on the ground, he picks it up, and he turns it into snake. Do you know, from that moment on, it's never called the staff of Moses again. It's always referred to as the staff of God. Why? Because he's thrown it down on something. God's done something supernatural with it. And that, our lives, when we lay our lives down, God does something supernatural with them. He picks it up and gives it us back. But I'm not just Mark Greenwood. I'm Mark Greenwood, one of God's agents. And so are you. And so are you. Should we pray? Let's pray. Just by means of closing, I wonder whether you might just reflect over those kind of reasons, those excuses that Moses gave, and maybe just honestly reflect and say, which would be the things that I would be more likely to use as reasons for not doing what God wants? Is it can't speak? Is it that's often maybe what if they don't believe, or what if this, or what would be? It might be all of them, of course. And I wonder whether you might just bring those to God now, and in a moment of rededication to the mission of God, whether you might be able to take that and just simply say these words in the stillness and quietness of your own heart and mind. Lord, help me to remember it's not a human enterprise, it's a divine operation. Lord, help me to remember it's not a human enterprise, it's a divine operation. Lord, we thank you for the joy and privilege of following you and serving you. Thank you for the privilege of seeing you work through us, Lord. And that you have chosen to restrict most of your activity on this planet through us as humans. Forgive us when we forget about the privilege of that. But Lord, this morning we're not going to bind ourselves up in guilt and condemnation. We're just going to simply say to God, we're sorry, but Lord, we open ourselves up. We rededicate ourselves to you this morning. Give us the confidence to know that you're always at work. And that actually when we step out, we're stepping out into something that you're already doing. And pray this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Everybody said? Amen. Bless you, folks. It's been lovely to be here with you this morning. I hope you've enjoyed. I always want people to enjoy what I say. I want to have a laugh and a giggle because it's a tough old life, isn't it? But I hope that you've been inspired and encouraged as well in your own faith. God bless. Thank you.